sound check. There is a little bit more feedback coming from this side here. So we're technically ready. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Montoya. I work for Steel Solutions, a federal contractor for the Environmental Protection Agency. I will be your facilitator this evening. I've already directed you to the restrooms. Completely unrelated are the snacks at the back table. Please help yourselves to those. I will be, depending on the length of presentations, the number of public comments, I will be a somewhat gentle but strict timekeeper. I was happy to have early meetings with each of the three principal parties as part of this meeting tonight, so that won't come as a surprise. Before we move any further, we want to begin with the OLA.
Since we have new people tonight, I'm going to explain why we do this OLA. It is to help us to focus on what we're really here, which is providing water. And ensuring that we have clean water, not just for us, but for future generations. This OLA is just the first verse, much longer OLA that was written by Ahupua. Can someone confirm that the feedback is going to be addressed?
No.
Vamping here, attempting to back up feedback addressed. I just want to say how appreciative I am for the feedback and the meetings that I have with the CRI members. I learned a lot. Your commitment to education is inspirational, and I think I am really excited for beneficial meeting. Because I'm so impressed with the leadership that you're showing. I also want to say that I'm so pleased to have had pre-meetings with representatives from the United States Navy, and that I too was impressed with the commitment, dedication, and thoroughness that you're showing, and openness to giving me feedback and hearing the way that I'm soliciting. So really, thank you for that, and I'm quite pleased to be here facilitating this evening. Sorry I didn't get a chance with the Department of Health. But I also want to express my appreciation to is the feed going over?
There's an echo coming through the TV because someone turned the TVs on. I'm trying to talk about it right now.
I'll continue if the feed is going to Zoom.
Yes, it's the live.
Yes, it is.
All right, you're good. And then I just want to make a final statement about our meeting pre-meetings with the EPA. I'm very appreciative of the work that you do, that I'm consistently impressed with the professionalism and the difficult environments in which you find yourselves, and appreciate the feedback that you gave me, as well as your ability to listen to the style of facilitation that I hope to bring this evening. And I have high hopes that we will have a very productive meeting and get through the agenda. So without further ado, let me say what that agenda is. In high level, we will begin with a general operations and closure update by the U.S. Navy. Then we will have a presentation by the U.S. Navy on the reopening of the Hālawa shaft, as well as a presentation from the EPA and Hawaii Department of Health talking about the regulatory process. Then there will be 30 minutes for CRI members to ask questions of representatives from Navy and the regulators. We'll take a 15-minute break. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about the drinking water system flushing. We'll start with a presentation by the EPA, providing a summary of what is required of the Navy. And then the U.S. Navy representative will provide an overview of the Joint Base Pearl Harbor drinking water system flushing. And then again, CRI will have 30 minutes to offer questions. Then there'll be a final 10 minutes for the CRI members to provide comments and updates. And then finally, there will be a 30-minute public comment period. Each presenter will be signed up in advance. Will be allowed a 2-minute period for commenting. If there is a lot of signups, I will be very diligent in monitoring that 2-minute, providing a little bit of warning right before the time, and then quickly moving us to the next speaker. I will be as gentle as I can, but we want to make sure that the members of the public have an opportunity to be heard in that 30 minutes. So I will now turn it over to our first presenters. I'm sorry. I forgot introduction. So let's start in this direction and work our way around the middle.
All right, thank you. I am Susan Gorman-Chang, the newly elected chair and representing the community of Hawaii.
I'm Yolani Sonora-Pale. I am a sub tonight for Native Hawaiian interest.
Aloha, I'm Yolisa Otis. I represent the community of Oahu.
Aloha, Bianchi Angelo, Borland, and Native Hawaiian representative.
I'm Bill South. I'm representing Sierra Club of Hawaii.
Hi, I'm Robert Huber. I'm the CRI member, board member, and representing Sierra Club.
I am Mariko Jackson. I am also a Oahu representative.
Captain Rob Kleiman, the decommissioning director with Navy Closure Task Force.
Good evening, Captain Gregory DeWitt. I'm the Chief of Staff for Navy Closure Task Force right now.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Commander Ben Dunn. I run the drinking water operations and environmental services and remediation for Navy Closure Task Force and support Joint Base for all ones.
Good evening, Joanna Sita with the Department of Health, Environmental Management Division.
Aloha, Kathy Ho. I'm the Deputy Director for Environmental Health at the Department of Health. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amy Miller, and I'm the Director of the Enforcement and Compliance Assurance Division at EPA Region 9 Pacific Southwest region.
Thank you for the introductions. Thank you, Amy.
Michael, you want to do the online results?
Oh, very well. Online, we will move. Are there CRI members online that would like to introduce themselves?
Hey, Michael, we got to be patient. We're being told from EPA online that there's a little bit of a lag. So we just got to give them a minute.
Thank you. Jamie, you're on. So we cannot hear a member of the CRI.
1 second.
You on it?
Can you let Michelle know to stand by that we've got an audio issue? I don't know if she can.
Do you know if that's audio for everyone on Zoom or just the individuals?
The people on Zoom can hear her, the people here cannot hear her. Just got to work out this audio bug. But someone needs to let them know.
It's being added to the chat.
Oh.
Pull us back out of that camera.
I see them if you scroll there.
Okay.
Oh, there they are. They're back.
Great. Who would,
Can you guys hear us
CRI
now?
members who are online, please introduce yourselves.
Oh, they can. Should I start? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Chris, you go.
Okay. Chris S. I'm CRI member affected, representing affected families.
Thank you. Who's next?
Jamie Simic, can we?
Aloha.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jamie.
Aloha, Jamie Simic, affected or representing impacted residents and affected families.
Michelle?
Aloha, I am Michelle Jericho Poplar. I am an affected community member and representative of Oahu.
Thank you. That's all the CRI members. Would any members from the Navy team online like to introduce themselves?
I don't believe we have anyone online.
Very well. Thank you. EPA.
Jamie?
I can start off, Jamie Maricola here with US EPA. I think given the lag, let's just have speakers and movement teams themselves that they're joining and update. We have a few people online. So.
Henning Larson, hydrogeologist with Region 9 for
Garcia Becker, manager of the water program.
Claire Trombador, I'm the director of the Land, Chemicals, and Redevelopment Division.
Allison Fong, I'm the assistant director of our Land, Chemicals, and Redevelopment Division, River Branch.
Matt Cohen, director of site remediation section manager.
I'm being instructed that we should just move to the presenters. Welcome those online, welcome those here in the audience, and let's get started with our first presentation.
Thank you. Do we have slides? If not, I'll just go ahead and get started then. Aloha. Once again, I am Captain Gregory DeWitt. I am the Chief of Staff for Navy Closure Task Force. And I would like to say that we're Admiral Williams and we're Admiral Lester Ortiz in a transition right now, which is why they could not be here. Admiral Williams will be transitioning command of Navy Closure Task Force to Admiral Ortiz. Admiral Williams does send his thanks. One for the partnerships, for being able to have those hard conversations. He recognizes the importance of what this team is doing and what to rebuild that trust, the community trust and engagement. So he's very grateful for that. Admiral Ortiz will be coming from Puerto Rico, so he is very familiar with island culture, community. They've known each other for several years, so we're very grateful to be able to have Admiral Ortiz coming on board. As I said, I am the Chief of Staff. Here with me, of course, is Captain Robert Kleinman. He's the Director of our Decommissioning and Commander Ben Dunn, who's the Deputy for Environment and Remediation. I am coming to you with my wife Margot from Naval Air Station Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm completing my tour as a training officer there for the installation. So from my perspective, I truly understand what's happening there. During that time, I had a lot of community engagements, time with the city, time also with Florida EPA. And my intent there was to continue to build those relationships, those partnerships, mainly because I saw it this way. Just because there's a fence around the installation doesn't mean there has to be a fence around my mind. It doesn't have to be a fence around my heart. There's partnerships. What happens on the installation also affects the people. And we cannot be effective if we are not working together. So I'm grateful to be here for this important mission. I'm glad that I bring that skill set, what I've learned, back to the light. My wife Margaret and I knew about 10 years ago, so also again fortunate to be back here. I got here in September, and at that time, very, very impressed with what I first saw for the team here, the progress that they've made. Of course, I was only tracking it from the outside at the time, but tracking from the complete refueling of all the tanks, over 104 million gallons from last year, to the progress that team has made right now. So that safe, deliberate decommissioning of this fuel system. And I want to assure you that during the month of October and November, when there was a lapse in appropriations or government shutdown, the mission continued. The uniform members were still there. We had a select few civilians that were still on point, and contractors. Still working, still moving forward with the mission to decommission this facility and to continue long-term monitoring. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Captain Kleinman so we can bring it up to speed and up to date on the latest on what we have.
All right, thank you, sir. Again, Captain Rob Kleinman, checked on board with Navy Closure Task Force Red Hill about 6-7 months ago in July. But my wife and I returned back to Oahu about a little over 4 years ago. My wife is from Oahu town, so we come back quite a bit. I was stationed here about 20 years ago as a young officer, and got my actually degree with the University of Hawaii. So definitely feel very connected to here and the island, and very honored to be part of this mission. So again, real quick professionally, got in this job in July, so I'm responsible for all the facilities and operations. So I've got a couple slides. We're going through our status, tank cleaning, and pipeline removal. And then before I was the decommissioning director, I was the public works officer, public works director for Joint Base. And before that, we just got on island in late 2021 and was part of the emergency response and the system recovery following the fuel contamination at Red Hill. So was there at the kind of beginning set, now here helping close down the facility. All right, with that, next slide, please. One more, please. Okay, so probably not a stranger to this slide, but I'll go just kind of orient everybody. So I've got 2 slides I'll be talking about. The first one's the tank cleaning. This is kind of a dashboard to provide a snapshot and update. So what it is 20 storage tanks that are up in Red Hill. When the decision was made to defuel the facility, 14 of those were in service, 6 were out of service and did not have fuel. So the ones that are kind of grayed out or blacked out were the ones that were not in service when the decision was made, so didn't have fuel in them. And so then of the 14 tanks that did have fuel, they are been all defueled. As Captain DeWinton said, 104 million gallons of defueled with the Joint Task Force. And so, of those 14, 8 are currently in a cleaning processor step. So orientate yourself to the left-hand portion of the slide. There's 4 steps that have been delineated to clean a tank. I'll go over some basics on what each steps are, but if you'd like more information, that QR code on the left-hand quadrant will take you to more detailed steps, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later as well. So again, 8 tanks are currently in one of those steps. And the step 1 really is about the initial preparation. So we do something called degassing. That's the ventilation of tanks to make it safe for someone to occupy. So when it had fuel in it, there's residual kind of volatile organic compounds that kind of make it unsafe to enter. So we degas the tanks for about 2 months, 1 to 2 months, in accordance with the health department air modeling permits. And while we're actively ventilating the tank, we post hourly data on our app and post the information on our website. For any of the air quality monitoring stations. Those information is archived, so you can go to the website now and get all of our data from back from May 2024 when we started that process of ventilation and degassing. I can also say that since we've been doing degassing, we have had no elevated readings from our air quality monitoring stations. Step 2 is the continued preparation of tanks. So now, after we've made it safe for entering, this includes structural inspections for those elements that make it safe for people to operate and work inside those tanks. So they'll inspect it and make necessary repairs. They'll install booms to enable people to work along the surface of the tank. And then we will also remove any residual sludge. So when we defuel the tanks, there's a small amount of sludge that did not come out during gravity defueling. As you can see, there's a number of 360 gallons, 361 gallons on the dashboard. That's from 7 of the tanks. We have not started the sludge removal yet for tank 20, but that should be started very shortly since we just finished degassing. Step 3 is really about the pressure washing. That's about the clean, where we do a water and simple green solution, and we pressure wash the interior of the tank. It's about 2 acres of surface area when you look at the interior of the tank. And we have completed pressure washing in 3 tanks, 5, 7, 8, and we were actively pressure washing tank 6, and that's actually nearing completion. The water used for pressure washing is actually reused water that comes out of Red Hill through the GAC treatment system that would normally go in the Hālawa stream. A portion of that is diverted and is utilized for the pressure washing in your tank. So it's not new water being drawn out of the aquifer. It's reutilization of the treated water. That rinse state water or wash water is then accumulated into a tank. It is characterized for waste characterization to ensure proper disposal of permits in the health department. And the last step is really obtaining regulatory concurrence for all the efforts we've done and demobilization of those said tanks. So right now we have 2 tanks in that last step. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a dashboard detailing our pipeline. It says clean status, but it's about our pipeline removal. For those that are not familiar, the Red Hill facility is about 3 miles from Pearl Harbor proper, and was connected with 3 fuel distribution pipelines. So if you stack all the pipelines together, you've got over 10 miles of pipe, a fuel pipe. So if you were to visually look at that, that goes from Pearl Harbor to Diamond Head. So as part of the process to ultimately remove those fuel pipes, we do something called cleaning or pigging. As we run a foam, like a pipe-sized foam, looks like a earplug almost, through the pipe. We either push it or pull it, and that's to capture any residual fuel or debris that did not come out when we gravity defueled. There's some low spots that exist in the pipe or in between like the valves and joints area. And so we've captured about 2,500 gallons of fuel during that process, and about 92% complete with the cleaning or pigging operations, and expect to begin actual removal of those pipelines in more of a production scale early next calendar year. Make sure I don't miss anything. So just talking about that work, that's almost, at the end of the day, it's almost 5 million pounds of steel that's going to come out of that. So key for us is making sure we're being safe and delivered, both from employee protection, making sure no one is harmed, and also environmental compliance. And so everything we do, although we value getting it done, we value it being delivered and safe over speed. And so that entails a multi-layer approach. We work with our contractors to review safety plans, review containment if they are doing work that might incorporate maybe fluid that might be trapped when we're taking a pipe off or a valve off that maybe has some fluid trapped behind it. We make sure containment's there, we inspect it, we invite the regulators out to also inspect that containment before we do any of those operations. And again, tremendous amount of oversight, the importance of the mission also just to ensuring that you don't make any mistakes on the way out. And ultimately, when the pipes are removed from the facility, they'll be sent to the continental United States for recycling. So, I'll turn it over to Commander Dunn.
I have a question. Where do you put the water that you use to clean out the tanks? Where does it go?
Yeah, so there's in the interior of the Red Hill system, there's a closed loop system, so kind of a drainage system that goes to a tank that's located on Red Hill property. And then that water then is tested, the rinsate, the water is then tested for proper disposal through usually it's non-island disposal facilities or processing facilities. It has a permit with the health department.
And where can we find the test that shows what's in that water?
I am actually not certain where it's posted, so I'll have to take that back.
Great. And just so you know, we're short on time.
All right, thanks, Michael. Hello, good evening again. So I'm Ben Dunn. I lead the environmental monitoring and drinking water efforts. I've been in this role since the summer of 2023. For the Navy Closure Task Force, I lead the environmental monitoring and environmental remediation efforts and the water well recovery mission for the Closure Task Force. I also support the Joint Base Commander with the enhanced drinking water monitoring, which supports the operation and maintenance of the drinking water utility. Next slide. So I'm pleased to continue to provide an update on the Navy's efforts to reactivate the Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft. This is one of 3 drinking water wells that was constructed to support the Joint Base system. Since late 2021, the Navy's been operating off a single well, and so it's very important that the Navy restores both this well and the Red Hill shaft drinking water production well in the future to restore resiliency and redundancy to support Joint Base operations. This well is the smallest of the 3 wells that support the Joint Base, but nonetheless it is important for resiliency purposes since we have a single drinking water granular activated carbon and ion exchange treatment system to address the presence of PFAS that was detected in this drinking water well. This well has not been impacted by fuel contamination relating to Red Hill. PFAS is the only constituent of concern to address to bring this well back into service. And the Navy's extensively monitored this well over the past 3 wells to document that presence of PFAS. Those results are available on the Safe Waters drinking water website. So speaking to the overarching procedure, earlier this year I provided updates on where we were in the spring in April and in the summer in July as we are working through a pilot study to demonstrate the effectiveness of the treatment system. We have since collected the data We have reported that and sent that to the Department of Health. That technical memorandum is available on the Safe Waters website as well. One of the items that we learned from that study is that we needed to look a closer or conduct additional evaluation of the ion exchange resin that we use for the treatment. And so we ran some additional evaluations. We owe another report to the Department of Health as part of the process to demonstrate to demonstrate conditions. And so we are working to reconfigure the treatment train at the treatment system to adequately address those concerns with the ion exchange. We've also been conducting engineering to complete some structural reinforcement to connect the treatment system to the distribution system. It is not connected, and we have also not operated this well since May, so it's not been in operation for months. Moving forward, we have those two efforts on site, which we'll be working through over the coming months, after which we would complete. We will invite the Department of Health and request that they conduct a comprehensive inspection of the well itself, the treatment system, the sampling points, the connection to the distribution system, everything about the modification and the treatment system of this well before we would proceed with requesting reactivation. So we're actually a few months out from doing so. I know folks are concerned with a timeline, but this is really not about a timeline. It's about a process that we need to follow. And so we want to make sure the Navy's doing its due diligence, and that's exactly what we're doing. Taking this process very deliberately and slowly to make sure we don't have any oversights before we get to the final steps. During those final steps, we will be providing communication to the public and to the consumers on the joint base system as that timeline approaches. But we're still a few months out from getting to that point. So likely we'll be providing additional updates before we get there after the new year.
You're Italian.
Okay.
Finish up.
Yeah, and I just would like to reiterate, it's a process that we're following, and we're very careful and deliberate about it. We will provide additional updates as we work through the final steps. So there will be more to follow on this effort in the near future. And we won't proceed until we meet the conditions necessary to do so. With their approval, express approval from the Department of Health. This is not a Navy decision.
Thank you, Commander Dunn. So as you've noticed, I am flexing the amount of time that people are given to account for the 6 or 7 minutes of technical difficulties at the beginning. But I have a little cards to alert folks, and thank you for being rushed. My apologies, but we have some time that we're attempting to make up. And just to remind everyone, there will be opportunity for questions and answers after the presentations that we will have next. So let's move to the reopening presentation.
Hello. So I think the Navy already gave their presentation about the reopening of the shaft, and so we're going to turn to EPA and DOH just explaining a few things about the regulatory process. And I think I'm going to turn to DOH first, and then we'll have EPA discuss a few things about groundwater. Okay.
Dennis is online.
There is a lag technically, so bear with us as we wait.
Yeah, just waiting for the slide to go. Okay, so the Hawaii Department of Health enforces the reactivation. Okay, the Department of Health enforces the reactivation of drinking water sources under a range of regulatory authorities established by state statutes and administrative rules. In the case of the U.S. Navy's proposed reactivation of a confirmed PFAS-contaminated water source, the Department of Health has issued 12 conditional requirements under a letter dated February 7, 2025, for the source designated State Well Number 3-2252-32, otherwise known as Navy Hālawa Shaft. The Navy's reactivation work plan and this letter are available for the public to review on the Navy's Safe Water website. To view these documents, visit the Drinking Water Monitoring section and select the Well Recovery and Water Resiliency tab at the top of the page. What you see in this slide are the relevant state statutes and rules. Thank you.
Should I jump in?
Yeah, it's quite automatic.
Can you all see my screen and hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Matt, I think you just got to go for it. There's going to be a little lag. You just got to.
I am. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Matt Cohen, manage the RCRI Site Remediation Section here at EPA Region 9, and I'm an expert in the field of petroleum. I've spent the last 2 years working on Red Hill, and before that I managed California's underground storage tank cleanup program, where we oversaw the cleanup of fuel releases from thousands of gas station sites across California. So we've heard some of your questions, and today I want to quickly go over what we know and what we don't know about the impacts to the environment. In the interest of time, this is a quick overview, but I'm happy to answer questions at this or other forums. I want to mention that the ongoing modeling and tracer study efforts were discussed at a previous CRI meeting, and they'll be able to help us understand how groundwater flows, including the direction. But it's important to note that contaminants move more slowly in water, or than water. Petroleum movement in the environment is limited by things like solubility and the ability to stick to rock and soil, and then natural breakdown by microbes. So we currently rely on groundwater data from the monitoring wells to understand the plume at Red Hill. The Navy collects information about fuel contamination from 47 monitoring wells in and around Red Hill, and many of these wells have a long history of sampling dating back to the early 2000s. Monitoring well data shows us that the plume of groundwater contamination is generally limited to the Red Hill facility and is stable. And there are wells between the Navy Hālawa Shaft to help identify any plume movement in that direction. And those are sort of, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but they're in the call out. There are those two wells kind of up away from the facility there. So this next slide has a series of maps showing an estimate of the extent of petroleum in the aquifer beneath Red Hill over time. These maps are based on an average TPH concentration with silica gel cleanup. Because TPH is a bulk measurement, it's a good representation of the petroleum we expect from Red Hill releases. These maps may look a little different than other versions we've shown in the past, but they show a similar pattern and shape and size. So here goes the animation. This is before the release, and you see the release happens. We see some fluctuations. And this is fourth quarter 2025. So what we see is an overall shrinking of the plume over time with persistent impacts limited to the Red Hill facility. We still see some fluctuations that tend to happen about the same time as heavy rainfall, and they're likely explained by remobilization of petroleum that's been trapped in the soil and groundwater above groundwater, so between the ground surface and groundwater. So you may be asking, how is the plume getting smaller if the Navy hasn't started remediation? I will say that the Navy has started some pilot scale remediation efforts, but most of what we see is from a process called biodegradation, which just means petroleum degrades naturally in the environment, microbes break it down, And biodegradation is enhanced by the presence of oxygen, and there's quite a bit of oxygen in Oahu's aquifer. The Navy Aiea Hālawa shaft is located over a mile away and off screen in these maps. Given what we know about the plume, it doesn't appear that the Red Hill plume is a threat to Navy, the Red Hill petroleum plume is a threat to Navy Aiea Hālawa shaft, even if pumping resumes. And as I said before, there are groundwater wells located between Red Hill and Navy Aiea Hālawa shaft to provide early warning if conditions change. So I talked about our understanding of what's in groundwater, so what comes next? On the previous slide, I mentioned petroleum being trapped in the soil and rock above groundwater. We've directed the Navy to develop a better understanding of the petroleum above groundwater. This is the zone, again, between the ground surface and groundwater. We call this the Vado zone. So the Navy is currently assessing releases, where releases may have occurred. This is site assessment and is expected to be completed in early 2026. Once they complete that and they have a good inventory of release locations, they can follow the contamination outward and find out how much and where the petroleum is in the environment. This is site investigation in the next step. All of this work will inform the remediation phase and will help develop the most effective remediation strategy. And I'll just note that while this is all happening, we've asked the Navy to continue routine groundwater monitoring. Now I'll talk a little bit about the model and how it'll help support the environmental work at Red Hill. It's important to note that the model is just one tool to support decision making, and we will evaluate multiple lines of evidence when making any decisions about the site. So we won't just rely on the model. We're asking the Navy to make sure that the model is evergreen and can be updated regularly as new information becomes available. The Navy has also indicated that as it becomes available, University of Hawaii data will be incorporated into their model. I will note that University of Hawaii data will need to be published and possibly peer-reviewed before it can be relied upon. Instead of looking at a single final version of the model, we're evaluating the model based on its ability to answer specific questions. So it can support decision making. And so what are those questions? Fate and transport. So we talk about where contamination, you might expect to see contamination and how long it might persist. And so this is where we combine the flow that we learned from the modeling and the Tracer study, along with kind of the factors that slow down the petroleum. Remediation design, so it's important, the model will help assess the effectiveness of any proposed remedial technologies and approaches, and it can be used to evaluate threats to drinking water sources. The model can also be used to ensure the most effective placement for future monitoring wells.
2 minutes left.
And that's what I've got. Thank you for your time. I know this is a brief overview, but I'm happy to answer questions you may have.
Okay, now I think that completes the presentation part. So now CRI members.
It does.
Hi, thank you. I have actually a whole list of questions that comes from the reactivation plan for the Navy Aiea Hālawa shaft. My first question is, what metrics is being used? So, and then what scientific justification for 9 consecutive quarters will be used? I mean, sorry, let me just go back. Let's go through the whole question. Sorry, I'm just trying to cut it short. But you know what? Let me just do the questions one by one. Okay. So we know that the Aiea Hālawa shaft reactivation plan states that the gap ion exchange treatment system will remain in use until source water is quote-unquote consistently reported compliant with Safe Water Drinking Act and National Primary Drinking Water Regulations, and on maximum contaminant levels for the PFAS for 9 consecutive quarters of testing. However, no metrics is defined what that compliant means. Is this merely meeting the MCLs exactly, or will they incorporate a safety factor below MCLs? What is the scientific justification for 9 consecutive quarters and then disconnecting the gap system after that? And why do you guys anticipate compliance after 9 quarters? Like, what is that scientific, the number? And will they leave the treatment plan in place in case water quality degrades after connection?
Let's let him answer those series of questions.
Okay, yeah, definitely understand the concern. The qualification of 9 quarters really represents an extended period of time. The need for the treatment system will be conditions-based. While that's indicated in the plan as a reasonable amount of time, where if we were to observe taking samples of the source water and it demonstrating for over 2 years that there is trace levels of PFAS only, then it could be argued that you would not need a treatment system because the source water beats the current standards or the future standards, which will be even more difficult here in 2-3 years as the reduced levels come into compliance. I anticipate that we will retain the treatment system on site as long as we intend to use that drinking water well once it's reactivated. So certainly understand the concern, but it's a conditions-based determination. So if it could be demonstrated that treatment isn't needed, which is probably not likely, then we would need to continue utilizing a treatment system for that well.
Could you say conditions-based in another way?
If the source water meets the standards without any treatment required, then that's what would warrant possibly demobilizing the treatment system and removing it from service. If after an extended period we don't see PFAS in the source water, then it would be reevaluated whether or not we need to continue utilizing that treatment system. But more likely would be the case that that is not going to happen. And so we would likely need to continue utilizing the treatment system for that well.
Does that answer the first series of questions?
Actually, it makes more questions for me, but okay, I'll take that for now. Because I mean, and have you found the source of the PFAS?
So we're not doing an investigation to determine the PFAS point of origin. There could be many factors, and in fact, it's an island-wide issue because almost all sectors of the island are reporting PFAS. So it's not unique to this location.
Okay, I'm gonna go on to another topic. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go to the Navy model topic. Sorry. So has the Navy reworked their hydrological water flow model after Don Thomas revealed that fresh water flows underneath Cap Rock into the ocean? And are you guys gonna wait? Well, you guys kind of answered that, if you're gonna wait for that model to be completed. It is pretty clear that from Dr. Thomas's model that we see the contamination. Well, we know that the red dye, the 20 pounds of red dye he put in the water, is actually going north, west, south. And so it is pretty clear that the contamination could be moving all over the place, right? And from what Dr. Thomas had presented, he is not really quite sure about finishing this model anytime soon. So what is pretty much, where are we going to be in terms of the model when you folks want to reactivate? Like, what are you going to be waiting for the model? Like, is it going to be 80% complete, or are you guys thinking next year reactivation? I mean, what is the timeline?
Is that a Navy question or an EPA question?
I believe it's a Navy question, and then EPA can add on as they feel. So the University of Hawaii's efforts, pleased to see some results coming from them. They have completed most of their field studies, but they have one ongoing, which is the dye tracers study, which you identified, and that's going to continue for a little while. So we're looking forward to their findings and their reports as they make those available next year. The Navy's model, which is independent of that, we have produced that last year. We produced an update, and you can find information about that on the Safe Waters website as well, on the groundwater or the environmental side. But the Navy is also independent of that effort, producing a comprehensive update to its groundwater flow model that will come in 2027. So the Navy's not done working its model. Also, as we continue to drill more monitoring wells on site, we get lithologic or rock data that helps inform our model. We continue to do groundwater monitoring, and then information that we get from the University of Hawaii's effort this year and next year, we would also look to incorporate it into our model to make it, more effective. And that update from the Navy will happen in 2027. However, we don't have a relationship between the Navy's groundwater flow model and the reactivation of Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft. We have sentinel or off-site groundwater monitoring wells between Red Hill and Navy IAEA, where we've collected a lot of data over the past several years, as well as the wells that are on site, and we haven't seen any contaminant migration at Red Hill or off of Red Hill or in the vicinity of Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft. PFAS is a concern there, and so they're unrelated. While it will be some more time before the Navy proceeds with requesting reactivation for Navy IAEA. It's not directly tied to the University of Hawaii's groundwater model and its studies.
Thank you for that. If you don't mind, I'm going to move to Jamie Simic online, who has a question.
Aloha. I know there's a lag, so I'm going to try to do this consecutively. Welcome the new Navy members that are here and representatives. Captain Kleiman, you might be exempt from this question, but I do want to know, with the new staff onboarding every 3 years, there's a change in command. How many death by PowerPoints are the new members coming in receiving in order to catch them up? On Red Hill, the effects, not just 2021, but the previous releases. That question leads me to that. Mr. Cohen, you stated that there's natural degradation, and there was a news report that came out in 2023, 2024 with, I believe, an EPA member, it was Hawaii News Now, stating that there was a plume from a previous release prior to 2021, dating back years, I believe it might have even been in the 90s, that they detected a plume moving. How long does this degradation take, and how do we know exactly which fuel grades we're following, and if the plume is above the water, the surface, or below? Also, what will be the continuum testing and the frequency of the testing that you spoke of, and what technology is being used in order to detect a threat if and when the plume resumes or comes near Hālawa shaft that you're wanting to reopen? And then leading to that, with the Navy, what exactly will be used in order to communicate and notify the public of any of the final steps that you have going on, or reopening, or if there is a threat from the plume, or if residents are reporting issues, is that still being taken seriously? And then finally, I know that you're relying on the Department of Health to come in and inspect. Would you guys also be open to the Board of Water Supply coming in and inspecting?
Thank you, Jamie. So
I think that's it for now.
Thank you, Jamie. So a question about the plume, a question about your communications plan, and other questions. The first one I missed, but I think you're tracking it. But Susan Gorman-Chang had a very quick question.
A very quick
related.
very quick comment. Could we just ask one question, get one answer? we could do that. It's really hard to me, it's multiple. But anyway, very quickly, I did want everyone to know the Navy, the EPA, and the DOH got these questions, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks ago, so they did have them ahead of time. Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, it's Captain DeWink, Chief of Staff. I will do my best to address the opening question, I believe, that you had with regard to new folks coming in. First, of course, being a new face myself, knowing that I was coming here, I reached out to my predecessor, Captain McCormick, as early as July. So I was starting to do some of my homework, I guess you say, so to speak, in terms of understanding what was happening here and what the team dynamics. Also, when I talked to my regional commander at the time, he was also out here before, so I had some information from him. I was able to speak to some other folks who are here on scene as well. So for me personally, it's getting involved, just understanding the importance. But that's how I operate. I can speak for Admiral Ortiz, knowing that he was coming here. I know that he knew several months ago that he was also coming here as well. So he has been fully engaged. And as I said, Admiral Ortiz also has a great relationship with Admiral Williams. So he was up to speed. And even though he is not here right now, I had about an hour-and-a-half conversation with him earlier today, and we have discussions with him on a daily basis. So when he's here in January, he will be up to speed. It's challenging how we transition, but I take it very seriously. Everybody who comes here takes it very seriously because we understand the importance of it. This is not it's not a fly by night. It's like, oh, just come in. We have to do our due diligence and do a good job. This is important. We're talking about the future here, so I hope that answers your question.
And the next question.
Okay, Jamie, I'm tracking 4 questions. How do we do the groundwater monitoring for fuel contamination, migration? How do we make that assessment? What is our communication plan for Navy IAEA, Hālawa shaft, and then engagement with peers? But you did mention EPA. Was there a specific question for EPA before I field these?
Yeah, I was specifically asking with EPA the technology being used, because Matt is the one that was bringing it up in order to detect a threat if and when pumping resumes. You're more than welcome to answer that as well. And, you know, more brains working together is better than one. And then also, he was speaking of the natural degradation, and we know, at least I know from the research that I've done, it takes 20 years for the fuel to move through the soil, and yes, there's degradation with the oxygen and everything, but there was a report in 2023, 2024 on media out in Hawaii speaking of a previous plume. So now, while I understand the degradation, how quick does the degradation happen? Because this kind of, the way this report is coming off is, okay, 2021 is getting smaller, it's shrinking, but if there's reports from, and I don't want to quote it wrong because I want to be as factual as possible. I can look it up. I believe I have it on my social media, but I believe that plume was from the 90s that they were speaking of, or the fuel that they were testing. So I just want to ensure that, get as much information about the degradation, and if, this is something that is going to take longer, what are we really looking at?
Yeah, so certainly it's not a process that happens overnight, right? Like we it's several years out now, and we still see bloom. And I don't know if you noticed, but my slide show, or the animation that I included, started in 2020, so before the release, and we could see that there was a small footprint of impact beneath the facility, and so Again, and it's not a straight line. It kind of, it's an asymptotic curve, so as you get further out, it's less and less, and it takes longer. But I guess the point of what I was trying to show is that we don't see plumes that sort of detach from the source and travel off to another place. What happens is it'll expand, and then the natural degradation starts doing this work, and it stalls, and then over time it'll start to shrink. And so what we're seeing right now is it's shrinking, and so that's what gives us a little bit of certainty that it's not traveling off somewhere else, or it's not gonna go somewhere else. So biodegradation or natural attenuation isn't gonna just cure it all overnight. It's a long process, but it does control it. It does help keep it from going in all different directions.
Quick follow-up, with you saying that your slide showed before with 2020, we do know that before the 2021 spill that has been, was first said it was only a few days, a couple of weeks, 10 days. With you saying 2020, are you talking about, now we know, and the DOH has confirmed during national academies that there was other leaks or spills that occurred in the summer of 2021 and previously? Is that what you're, showing that?
The 2021 release isn't the only release that's happened from Red Hill. So the EPA's involvement started, there was a release in 2014 that is why there's the 2015 AOC. So I don't want to speculate about what or when, but for sure there's a documented release in 2014 that could contribute to impacts to groundwater. Now, I want to caution you that what's in groundwater isn't necessarily what's in drinking water.
Correct. Yes, correct. And then, are you able to tell the time frame, because fuel makeups change every few years?
What we see, I mean, I'm certainly not there are people that are way more in depth, can go way more in depth into this kind of thing, but it's my understanding that most of what we see is degraded enough. You can't tell necessarily, you can't say, hey, this was from 2014, or hey, this was from 2021. It's sort of an amalgamation of a lot of things, and you can't parse it out in that way, if that makes sense.
So it's safe to say with 2014 and all the previous leaks, including 2021, Hawaii is facing a pretty big problem.
There are impacts to groundwater that addressed.
And then the rest of it as well. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Jamie, thank you. And these are really important questions, and I wonder where is the venue to continue that line of question and to get more information about that. We, of course, don't have time to go down the rabbit hole today in the detail that I think these wonderful questions are seeking, but there may be a place where that could be addressed, and I'm not quite sure who might know where that is. And if you don't have an answer for it right now, I'm sure Jamie would appreciate it, as would the CRI members, for more information about these questions. Let's consult this report or check this website out. I do want to build upon Chair Gorman Chang's suggestion that it's one question per person until we've had a chance for the 5 remaining CRI members to ask any questions that they may have. And so I turn it back to any questions.
I think you didn't answer about the community outreach one that Jake asked.
Yeah, I didn't address any of those questions.
Great, go for it.
In short order, in a follow-up to the historical releases and the extent of that impact, we have a project called the site assessment that Mr. Cohen briefly mentioned. That is a process where we go in and we look at historical releases. We take samples to confirm the presence or absence of that, and then we go back and we characterize that. So we know where and what to clean up. We'll have an additional update on that field work later next year as we work through that process. There'll be more to follow in the future, about a year from now or so. We use groundwater monitoring wells. We have an extensive network of those. We continue to drill wells off-site, specifically between Red Hill and drinking water production wells. And that is one of the main areas that we are able to monitor conditions in the aquifer about whether there's any movement of fuel contamination on site or off-site or towards one of the drinking water wells. We have some areas where we don't have any, and that's why we're continuing to drill more. For the communication plan and outreach for Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft reactivation, we'll continue to provide updates in forums such as these after the new year. As we pick those up, we will have public messages. There will be notification to the consumers as the Joint Base issues those often about maintenance activities on the base or other events. There will also be a public announcements, and so we're working through the details of what and when that is, but it'll be a couple months out from getting to that point. And again, we need to finish the work on site before we get to that point. And then as far as other parties being involved with inspecting or sampling from wells, etc., every work activity that the Closure Task Force does, the Navy does at Red Hill, is a work plan that is developed in coordination with, utilizing many scientists and engineers, but specifically they are all reviewed and approved by the regulators, DOH and EPA. So every work activity, every operation, tank cleaning, closure, all the environmental monitoring, remediation, all of those things are plans that are deliberately vetted through the regulators, incorporating their comments and guidance, and then ultimately gaining their approval before we're able to move out. And so that's how we go about doing this work, and we're going to continue to do that and comply with the federal statutes and state of Hawaii statutes that apply to this kind of work.
I just have two more questions.
Can we?
I was actually assigned to do these questions.
Yeah, she's the team leader for that.
Very well.
Yes.
Continue.
Sorry.
So the Navy suggests using a high-density polyethylene pipe for the new hookup. Is this safe in a contaminated area for connecting to the distribution system? Is known contamination or permeation risk in this type of pipe? And would this pipe run through contaminated soil? And also, what was your expected date of reopening the well? Thank you.
So we're, again, several months out. It's really driven by the work on site. We've got at least 2 months to go to finish the work on site, and then there's that coordination and notification process. So we're really looking at probably March or so. But again, we'll provide updates as we work through that. The HDPE pipe, that's a common material that we use for drinking water systems. And there's cast iron pipes, there's many different types of plastic pipes, but that's kind of an industry standard. But again, after all the work that we are doing, we are submitting and coordinating with the Department of Health, and that's also why they're coming out to inspect. They're inspecting every piece and every component aspect of this treatment system and the configuration of tie-in before we move forward.
Okay. And then one more question. So the treatment system will only be monitored quarterly once operational. That's 1 day a week. That means it's monitored. Monitoring will happen every 12 days when it's in actual operation. Is this adequate?
Yes, so we have to meet Safe Drinking Water Act compliance requirements, but also as we work the final coordination with Department of Health and we request approval to do so, that's when Department of Health will identify any and all requirements that we need to take care of post-reactivation, in addition to what they've already set forth. So we intend to do post-reactivation monitoring and meet that frequency and any other stipulations that DOH may set forth. But sorry, I know what I was going to say. Excuse me. We're not going to most likely be operating that well every day. So it's not a continuous operation per se. So it's kind of an intermittent operation that supplements the flow.
So did I hear you correctly? You're gonna use your model, your flow model, not Dr. Thomas's flow model, right? Is that what you said earlier? You're using the Navy's model in order to figure out where the water's gonna go so you can open the well. Is that correct?
The groundwater flow model the Navy has and the groundwater flow model that the University of Hawaii has is not related or driving the reactivation of the Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft.
Why? Why not?
Because we have evidence from our groundwater monitoring that there is no contamination related to fuel that has impacted the Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft. The contaminant of concern is PFAS, and that's why the treatment system is designed to treat PFAS, and that's what's been documented and observed. And so that's what the procedure is set forth to address all the stipulations set forth by Department of Health or Safe Drinking Water Act. Does not speak to fuel-related contamination, but again, we've not seen evidence of that. Our studies indicate that there hasn't been migration of fuel from Red Hill off-site, and so they are unrelated.
Thank you. So you're treating PFAS, but you don't know the source of it, and you're not going to wait for Dr. Thomas's model to be completed before you reopen the shaft. That's pretty much it.
That may not happen. And as far as PFAS, that's it's a nationwide issue that every utility has to deal with. The utilities aren't creating this problem. They have to address it in order to provide Safe Drinking Water Act, suitable water.
I'm done with my questions.
If I may, reactivation of the shaft and having a source of drinking water, the focus is on what is in the water and what kind of water you're going to put in the distribution system. So the focus is on treatment. So we focus on making sure that the water that is getting into the distribution systems meets those maximum contaminant levels. And so if the water from an underground source is not, it has contaminants, it needs to be treated. And so the focus of the regulatory review is really about the treatment and the water going into the system, the chemistry. Thanks.
Yeah, and I would say that we are very unique because our aquifer, we have one aquifer in our island, they're all connected. And from what Dr. Thomas had presented, not just at the FCAP, but at the last redhillCRI, it's very clear no one knows how the water is moving and therefore how the contaminants are moving. And we just found out about Camp Smith and all of the contaminants coming out of there. And not investigating the PFAS source, I think is really problematic, here. But, and I get what you're saying, you're treating, the water, but also like how is it gonna affect all the other wells, like border water supply wells? Because we know that the water is moving and that there is a plume and there are contaminants in the water. And so I think that needs to be looked at more closely, because how is it gonna affect everyone else on this island? We live on an island.
I agree with you that is a very important thing, is understanding groundwater. And one of the things a good drinking water system has is a source water protection plan. And part of that is understanding your groundwater, how it moves. And there is a lot of effort here. And so we also presented to you tonight the work that's going on with regard to the modeling, to the monitoring, so that when a drinking water system is pulling, you know what the potential pollutants could be.
Thank you. I just want to say that there's still like 20 pounds of dye tracer missing. Dr. Thomas still didn't get it back. So I'm done with my questions.
So I just want to know if your guys' water system supports the irrigation of the golf course, Specialist Ground over there, because The largest user of water here on Oahu is the Kaneohe Marine Corps base, and that's because of partially due to their own golf course. And the fact that, we spent the last couple of years down a lot of critical wells, both on the Navy side and on the civilian side with Board of Water Supply. And so I'm wondering if in the past couple of years, have you guys made any kind of plan of how to be a more pono steward of our water and delegate that water use more responsibly, not for golf courses, but, clean water for the people who need it and the plants that need it and the aina that needs it rather than a golf course that is not necessary. So that's just one of my concerns is just, we're having a shaft reopening and I'm wondering if that water is going to go towards something that is really not necessary in a time where our own Board of Water Supply does not have the funds necessary to do our own, system to treat our water. We don't have the funds to have new wells, whereas, there was a really large appropriation in the Defense Authorization Act for water treatment here for the Navy. So, just the fact that there is this imbalance of funding and this imbalance of who has to make these sacrifices, we don't have that luxury of getting huge appropriations for our own water system compared to you folks. So that's just one of my questions. Mahalo.
I think it's a really important question also, but just like Jamie's question, I'm not sure if this is the place to address the uses of water on the golf course unless it is a direct connection, and if you have one, that's great. But I've been tasked to try to keep us within what you can answer, and but my question is, where can those answers come from, and where can you direct anyone listening to get the answers? And that's not just for you; it's for you. It's for any of the regulators as well. So if anybody has those questions, those answers to this important question, that would be great. Otherwise, you have a response.
Yes, Emilio, thank you. I do hear you. Certainly, water conservation is a measure and a management practice on the joint base. The Navy also did reduce water consumption from the Red Hill shaft early last year, reducing the pull out of that by over 50%. But as far as the golf course, whether or not it's fresh water or if it's a recycled water, Rob, can you the background?
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me? Right. Yeah. So the joint base distribution system, which does include the current shaft and the one that is being planned to reopen, does incorporate the golf courses that are one over here and one on the Hickam Air Force Base. So that's incorporated. I'd say if you have questions, probably other forums, you can ask. Really, the joint base does manage the water consumption and water conservation measures to include golf courses. That could be directed to the joint base public affairs and try ultimately other things. There's other venues to kind of direct water consumption questions. I know we're really talking about the reactivation of water quality.
Great. We are very close to time for a break, scheduled break. Do you have a question, Mr. Gruber?
Hi, I'm Robert Huber.
I do. It's regarding the distribution of, the network of the flushing the water from, making it good, safe drinking water. Okay. And the question is about the testing that's being done and the information and data that's being given to the Department of Health, as well as abiding by the EPA's regulations for safe drinking water practices. But most of all, it's about the drinking water microbiome. And what we're seeing in biofilms today in any large distribution network of water through old pipes. What most people don't know, and what I didn't know, is that serious illnesses can occur from those microbes. And there's good bacteria that can break down, benzene, and will do it over a long period of time. But there's other microbes in there that are not good. And in those biofilms, and the biofilm within our own system, it can kill One of them, just being light on it, not making a big dramatic statement here, is Legionella. Legionnaire's disease, I thought it was airborne, and it's not. I mean, it is, but I'm sure there's other ways, and one is through water. The other one, the Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which is a very widespread environmental microbe. My question to you is, can we get some data showing us the biofilms, showing us that, you know, what's being tested, and if they're within the safe practices of the EPA and the Department of Health for the state of Hawaii. We would like public information regarding these items. I think, you know, PFAS is very important, but I also think, you know, these microbes and what they are and the classifications and the data pertaining to the testing is very, very important for human health on this island. It's a life and death situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So I have a couple of questions. Is that a water quality pertaining to the flushing?
Yeah.
Flushing, yes,
flushing in
so
the
that's our next, after break, that's our next topic. So I wonder if that would be an appropriate time to get a response to those interesting questions. Okay.
Any other questions on the reopening of the Hālawa shaft? Oh yeah, Chris has her hand up online.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I hear that. Really quickly, how quickly are you getting your water test results? With the shop reopening, and likely we'll not have another CRI meeting with you all before you go forward by March. What type of test are you using? Are you doing field test quick results? Are you waiting weeks for mainland testing labs? So have concerns about results with the shaft reopening, and this was a contaminated well, so it has a history of a contamination. So my concern is quick results with no on-island lab, to ensure that you are getting your full results for if fuel is present. And then this may have been answered, but I just want to also throw it out there. How are you sure the plume is between the tanks and above the aquifer?
Yeah, so the testing for Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft has been pretty extensive over the past
This is the Navy.
year and a half. The requirements for sampling and monitoring, again, align with the Safe Drinking Water Act. So that is not specific to fuel contamination. We did conduct our pilot study back in the spring, where we sampled for several weeks. We have never found petroleum or fuel in the Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft source. And we will continue to do sampling after we reactivate. The only laboratories that can do some of those analysis, or most of those analysis, are EPA certified laboratories on the mainland. Or we do take field water quality parameters, but we've got a good idea of what's in the drinking water today and how it lines up with regulated standards for baseline Safe Drinking Water Act requirements. But we know there's PFAS there, and that was also the reason why we ran this pilot study, so we can get more data of the source water and then data of the performance of the treatment system. But again, there's been no detections of petroleum or petroleum hydrocarbons or fuel at the Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft.
Okay, just to react with that a little, sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. So you're not testing for any fuel because you believe your prior historical testing has shown none, so you no longer test for it?
We will continue to run samples for the Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft, and perform analysis on that with respect to fuel as we work through the reactivation, recommissioning process. But we've seen no petroleum or fuel in the groundwater in that vicinity. We've seen none at that well. So there's no reason to believe that there is fuel in that location. But as we work through this process, we will continue to closely monitor the water quality there.
Okay, maybe the mediator can help with that a little bit, because I'm not feeling heard. It sounds like you are saying you're not going to test for it because you have not seen or detected any in historical past behind times from today, but that you won't test for it because that's a more involved process. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm hearing that you are testing for it, and it's an ongoing sampling in perpetuity, basically.
Well, we have sampled, and we will conduct additional samples. We're not running the well right now, so we can't conduct a sample today, or we're not doing it today, this month, per se. But as we finish the process, we will collect additional samples. But thereafter, once we reactivate and we move past an initial reactivation period of weeks or months, that'll depend on DOH, long-term monitoring will not include petroleum hydrocarbons or fuel monitoring at that well.
And
that's what I'm hearing.
And that is under, you're being bound by what the Department of Health and EPA requires you to do.
Well, we are going to meet those requirements, but we will continue to monitor the aquifer across the extensive groundwater monitoring network that we have, and we have frequent monitoring of that. And we have not seen through that program any fuel moving towards Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft or in the vicinity of it or at that well from the groundwater, which is the aquifer we pull from.
And for an important concern like the sampling to assure that the water is going to be sampled and safe, where can people turn? Where is that repository of here's the sampling process? And I'm sure it's an evergreen system that is always being updated, but where do they go?
So the baseline annual report for the drinking water system is on the Navy Region Hawaii's website for the annual consumer confidence report that any utility would provide. But samples specific to the Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft, we have a website, webpage on the Safe Waters drinking water webpage. It's called the Well Recovery Water Resiliency. It's where all these documents about the reactivation are, the work plan, the pilot study, tech memo, the conditional approval from the Department of Health that sets forth the requirements of the process. All the sample results from the 3 drinking water production wells are on the same page. We put all of that in a single location so that you can find and not have to distinguish between samples taken across the system and so forth. So future results taken from that Navy IAEA Hālawa shaft will be in the same location. So you can, as we work through the process and we produce reports and additional sample results, they will all reside there. So it's convenient to go to a single place and see all of that without having to flip and navigate through other results.
Thank you for that. And clearly there's more to discuss here about how to make all of those reports and that data accessible, where questions and back and forth can occur in, I'm sure, meetings such as this one and others. We are at time. We are actually over time. We will reconvene in 10 minutes, if that's okay. That puts us at about 6:39. And then we will attempt, since Robert has already asked his question, we're going to get a little time savings there, but also in the presentations in the next part of the meeting, be mindful of time in your remarks there as well. So see you in 10 minutes.
6, please. Let's get started.
Thank you for finishing up your conversations and taking your seats so that we will have enough meeting time. Thank you.
But anyways, let's look it up. Start looking up. You're going to be shocked.
Thank you for finding your seats and let's get started. First up is the EPA to give a presentation on flushing.
Okay, so I'm going to be handing it off to Luis in one moment. But first, I just wanted to explain, and I want this one to work. Isn't that amazing? When after the emergency response effort, we went in and we conducted an inspection to look at the overall drinking water system. And we found that the system needed some improvements. And so under the consent order, we had many things that are what are considered gold standards for drinking water systems. So within the order, you'll find things like preventative maintenance program, SOPs for operator and a training program, valve exercising program, flushing plan, cross connection control, and leak detection plan. So we have been overseeing the Navy in developing these practices, which are considered, what is model for a drinking water system, because our goal is to leave the system better than it was. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Luis, who's going to talk about the flushing aspect and why that's being required. Luis?
Yeah, thank you. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Very good. I can hear my echo in the room now. So I don't have any slides here. I'm just going to kind of speak to flushing in general. Why do water systems flush? One of the main principal things that reasons why systems will flush is to improve water quality, right? So what impacts water quality? It can be water age. Sorry, I just had feedback with my end. Gonna need to work through this. When water stagnates in the system, it can lead to foul odors. It can also build up carcinogens like phototrihalomethanes, which are disinfectant byproducts. Basically you want to essentially flush out a lot of that stagnant water that can have contaminants in it that build up kind of naturally through the just biogenic processes that occur within the water system. There is also situations where through, in a groundwater system like joint base, where the system, is extracting water from, essentially the earth, and that can cause sediments to be drawn into the water system, and those sediments can, move out and move through the distribution system, and that there are, and these sediments can build up in certain areas, and sometimes this can produce, this can actually get delivered into, residential connections and stuff like that. So there can be discolored water. Sometimes you can get a little bit of grit in your water. Regular flushing is also needed to kind of flush out a lot of these sediments. There are other certain minerals like iron and manganese that can either, come from the geologic portion where that groundwater comes from, or from the pipe materials themselves. And those those minerals can also, what will happen is they will kind of precipitate out of the water. They'll concentrate and precipitate out, and they'll also basically fill up, develop as sediments in the system. And again, the principal purpose of flushing is to clean all of this out. There are different approaches and schedules to flushing, right? So, as Amy was mentioning, there is kind of the gold standard, which is to do a lot of preventative flushing, just kind of getting out there and doing the flushing.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but
you
you need to give context to the flushing. People
water quality conditions
don't understand what he's talking about.
Kind of
give an
developing
of what the flushing
that are undesirable, and you are able to get out on a regular schedule to flush that water and associated buildup out of the system. There is, and then the other side of the schedule is to do it as
can you see me?
Kind of as as a more reactionary. When you start to receive complaints from customers, or you're actually observing kind of adverse water quality, through some of their own sampling.
Thank you.
Within the maintenance flushing as well, so within this maintenance flushing, you want to generally try to achieve high velocity, kind of create high velocity flow, which creates scour. So you need to actually kind of be able to mix this stuff up in the solution so that it will turn out. And and so to kind of flush it out. And I want to kind of compare this against emergency response flushing.
Hey, can you pause there for a second, Luis? Luis, can you pause for a second? Luis, can you pause for a second?
Yeah,
thank you.
I will stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have one statement about what is flushing? In this context, what is flushing?
What is he responding to?
I think we'll get some more background in the Navy's presentation as well.
Read the agenda.
Yeah, my apologies. I had to turn my sound off, so I
all right. Well, possibly you're fine. Let's move to the Navy presentation because we're at time. But if you would sort of put it flushing this in this context and explain sort of the whole situation, if you would.
Yeah, certainly. So again, I'm speaking on behalf of Joint Base here, who is the water purveyor on the installation. So representing here with their drinking water systems management. And before I get into the nature of flushing, I want to clarify. There's been a consumer notification notice to the residents on the drinking water system that the Navy's going to be conducting flushing over the next year. That caused some feedback, which was welcome to hear. That is helping us inform future notices, for one. But that flushing that is happening today is a maintenance activity. It is different and separate and not the same as the flushing that was done in 2022 as a method of recovering the drinking water system to put it back into service. The Navy did that in response to what happened with the November 21 fuel release that impacted the drinking water system. The Navy worked with multiple agencies and DOH to come up with a plan to recover the system, and it involved a zone. Each and every zone was had recovered as presumed normal water quality. The flushing that we want to overview tonight it's a maintenance activity, specifically predominantly a preventative maintenance. And what does that entail? That entails operating fire hydrants along distribution systems across the network, across the entire water system to help circulate water through the system and keep fresh water in the system so it is not sitting. And so we send crews out around to different zones to basically operate a hydrant. We don't connect a hose to it. We basically just discharge a hydrant for 10 to 20 minutes to flush out. So there is ponding that occurs. Typically, hydrants are right along roads, so it's surface runoff that ponds and then it runs down the curb stormwater drainage system. Doesn't go to a wastewater treatment plant typically. So anyhow, this maintenance activity, this flushing activity, we qualify it as normal maintenance. It's routine. We've been doing flushing across the joint base typically every month. Somewhere on the installation, we are doing a deliberate flushing of hydrants. This has gone on for a long time. The new requirements in response to the November 21 release and those requirements in the ACO are helping codify and make sure we have a deliberate, extensive plan to manage. The joint base system is very large. It has many annexes, many sites around the actual Pearl Harbor, and not just directly Pearl Harbor Hickam. So this is one activity, one function of the drinking water system manager to make sure that the system is operating properly. We have treatment systems that we operate. We have leak detection monitoring, preventers. We do, so an inventory, we do a condition assessment, and that helps drive our understanding when we need to repair or replace something, recapitalize it to make sure that the system functions. So it's just a continuous cycle of these activities, cross-connection control, backflow prevention. These are all efforts that are done that help the drinking water purveyor manage their system properly. And so this maintenance flushing, we kicked off a full system-wide program this fall. We've recently been flushing in Kapalina Beach Homes community. We will be cycling through, moving around different areas of the joint base over the coming years. I know there was some great feedback provided back in October about the initial notice that went out about it, basically saying, hey, we're going to do this across the whole system over the next year, and provide a lot of detail to specific areas so that you could anticipate in the coming weeks when it would be in your neighborhood. So we will be providing an updated notice to our consumers after the new year with updates on the schedule, where we are, where we will be, and we'll continue to do that. Additional information about these types of activities, about flushing, as Louise was kind of overviewing how that's approached. That's really an American Water Works Association standard that is applied. It's a best practice across industry. It's required of the Navy through this program. There's additional information on the EPA and DOH's website to kind of deep dive the nature of this kind of work, what's involved, what you consider throughout. This is also because it's a requirement for the Navy. It's coordinated and approved by EPA specifically. And we do have our Navy Water Quality Action Team that we just renewed the service for, so that'll be available for the next year and in the long term. But that's to respond to any nature of water quality concerns. It doesn't have to be fuel-related concerns. It could be, I have brown water. Well, they maybe have been doing construction work and replacing a water pipe in your neighborhood, and that could have had some sedimentation that got into the pipe and caused some discoloration. That's also why we do this flushing, to make sure that residual, if there ever were any, is removed from the system. So the contact number here is for our water quality action team. They'll respond, they'll come to your home. Anybody that is served by the joint base system, including Kapalina Beach Homes, and they'll look at your premise, they'll look at your home, they'll investigate any concerns they may have. They'll look at your water heater, they'll take samples on site for quick field parameters screening. They'll take deliberate samples to send off to the lab for full analysis by EPA standards. We follow up, we have a consumer interface function as part of that. That's another aspect of system management. We want to ensure we're addressing consumer concerns, whatever they are. So hopefully that provides some detail, some context, the intent of how the Navy is approaching this activity across the joint base over the coming year. But there will be additional updates as we work through the schedule.
Okay. It is now time for the CRI members to ask their questions.
Okay, Susan Corbin Chang, I'm the one that's going to ask some of the questions. We're going to divide it among ourselves. We're going to do people here first and then online. I just want to clarify the administrative consent order is was done when? That had the Flushing appendix with it.
2023.
2023, okay. So in that, very quickly, and these questions are asked ahead of time, are you able to provide the Flushing plan in writing? Because the EPA says you must have that. Can you provide that to us?
Yes, there is. So part of the 2023 administrative consent order, there is a section on drinking water deliverables. There are many deliverables. We have not completed all of them.
You have not completed the Flushing plan, so we don't have one yet?
That's not what I said. What I said was I'm explaining there is a lot of submittals relating to the drinking water system that are submitted to EPA. We have completed some of them. Those are available on the Navy Region Hawaii website. So you can...
When you say those, you mean the Flushing plan is available where on that website?
So the unidirectional Flushing plan document is available on that website under the Section 6 drinking water section for the 2023 administrative consent order.
Okay, great. How about a comprehensive, and these are, I'm just reading these from the ACO that EPA is requiring. A comprehensive working hydraulic model, called for on page 17.
We do have a summary of the hydraulic model as part of the Swarm Team Tech Memo on the Safe Waters website.
Working hydraulic model on the
Swarm Team Technical Memorandum on the Safe Waters Drinking Water website.
That has the working hydraulic model in.
That is not the model itself. That is a summary of the model. The model is the software.
Thank you. That was my question. Why can't you provide the model?
The model is the software, and you have a summary of it on the Swarm Team. All right. And the third one, valve inventory and maintenance program. That's a third requirement on page 17.
Similarly, so that is, I think, in draft form at this time, and so we're finalizing some comments, but once that is submitted to EPA and it's approved, that will also go on the website. So anything that's not currently on the website today will be at some point in the future once we finalize it and it's endorsed or reviewed by the EPA. Sometimes it takes a little while because they have comments, we have to fix it, so forth, and then route it again, approve it, and then we'll post it.
Okay, so it's going to be in the same place that the summary model is, or the unidirectional?
It'll be in the Section 6.
Section 6, okay. All right, and, okay, great. Thank you. So next we're going to go to Bill. He has two questions.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Bill South there. Yeah, I have a couple of questions with regard to laws, regulations, protocols from the EPA with regard to the flushing. And one of my concerns is that flushing will not remove like hydrocarbon contaminants. So where you are flushing and where you know you've got some potential problems, how is this flushed water sent to a treatment plant, or if it's released into the environment, how is it monitored for protection of both the terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems in our island?
Yeah, so when we conduct the flushing at a hydrant, we measure chlorine for disinfection purposes. But we have taken extensive samples of the drinking water system over the last 4 years, 17,000 from the source water at Waiaba. Over 90% of the homes served by the Joint Base. And then across the distribution system, when we say that across the pipeline network, we mean we take samples from the fire hydrants, which is where we do the flushing. So we have a lot of data from samples taken at hydrants. And we have, across all of those samples to date, not detected fuel in the drinking water system.
And you're cross-referencing and working with the EPA as far as some of these requirements?
Yes, sir. They, all of our work plans, all of our sample results, they're all made available to the EPA and the DOH. We invite them out on our sampling schedule, so they are aware of when we're doing it and where we're going. And oftentimes, they have been out to observe to make sure we're following the correct sampling procedure. They provide feedback or they communicate whatever the concerns may be. But EPA has also taken independent samples periodically, basically spot checking, to compare those results with what the results the Navy is reporting. And so they have found similarly, they have not detected fuel in the drinking water from the samples they've collected over the last couple of years across the distribution or across the system, including the distribution system.
That's it, yeah. Okay, next, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask Mariko to go. We're gonna do the people in the room first because of the delay. Thank you.
So I guess the concern about the flushing of the hydrants is that because this water may contain contaminants from jet fuel spill, because it maybe has been sitting there since then. I know that you've been taking samples, but there is a concern that with the act of flushing, is there any possibility that things can be dislodged because of the force of the water, because of the flushing practice? Is there any concern that that might actually disturb something that has been sitting in there for over the time?
Yeah, I understand the concern. So as we've done these sampling programs over the last 4 years, and all those sample data, sample results that we've reported, we have been doing flushing across the system, but we haven't seen any evidence of fuel in the system. And then of course we have the sample results that demonstrate that there has not been anything detected in the system as it pertains to fuel. So that's, we also continue to monitor, and these the data we collect from the various home inspections that we do from the Water Quality Action Team help also provide evidence to that as well.
Did that answer your question?
Well, I guess I'm just curious if there is any, I mean, I understand that the sampling of the water at the hydrants has not shown that, but because of the activity that's happening there, if it's sitting still and you're sampling it, then, you know, is it showing something different than what might happen with the activity of flushing? Because, I mean, because fuel isn't necessarily present in every drop of the water in those reserves, if the activity is going to dislodge or just cause something to go through the system in a different way, and then maybe possibly have contaminants that were in the system at some point.
Yeah, I want to point you to a resource that we have on the Safe Waters website, which is the Quarantine Technical Memorandum. That's a large document, but it also has a summary sheet. There's also a slide presentation that you can follow along. But as part of that effort and investigation, we looked at those, and we looked at other factors to determine whether or not there's fuel in the system, fuel moving through the system, and so forth. And so, I go back and I state we have not seen any evidence of that, but that evaluation looks at some of those other factors that help support that conclusion.
If I could, I think the question is, when you're doing these flushings, like Capitolina Beach homes, is anybody testing the water that's coming out of the fire hydrant as it's being flushed?
We take just chlorine samples to measure the chlorine level in the water.
Just chlorine, okay, yeah. I think that was the question.
When you flush it, when we take these samples that go through the evaluation to determine whether there's fuel, we have to use a laboratory on the mainland, so that's not a timely, by the point you flush it, you've already discharged the water. But
if I may,
how do you know that the water that you're flushing as part of routine maintenance does not contain? Is there sort of upstream sampling? You probably already answered that, but I'm hearing the question. So how do you know there's not fuel in the fire hydrant water that you are flushing?
So it is one singular system. Thank you for asking that. You know, maybe at some sites you may have a different network, different pipelines for feeding the fire hydrants for fire protection purposes. But at the joint base system, it is all one integrated circuit. So the pipelines connect to the homes, they connect to the hydrants, which is why we use the hydrants to sample, you know, across the distribution system. And sorry, can you ask that again? I lost my train of thought.
It's just upstream.
Oh,
How
yes,
do you know
upstream.
there's not any hydrocarbons in the water that's being flushed from the fire hydrant?
Yeah, certainly. Okay, so sorry, I bring that up because those hydrants are connected to the distribution line and further up the transmission, ultimately the source. Right now, because we have two of the wells offline, our only source is the Ahupua well out in Pearl City area. And we've tested that well extensively. We continue to test that well every month. We've never had a detection from a fuel in that source water. And that kind of makes sense. It's the furthest away from Red Hill. You would least expect it there. But very importantly, that's why we continue to test that every month, which is really frequent. And we've also tested it throughout all the inspections and these different programs that we have. And it is very stable in its water quality. And so there is no concern that the source of the water that we pull from to distribute to the system. And as we've monitored over the last several years across the distribution system, we haven't seen that. And that's why we're confident that it's not present.
Can I just say one thing? Commander Dunn, maybe you could talk a little bit about when the emergency flushing was happening and the sampling that was done at that time, because I think that's relevant to the question.
Okay, so as part of the recovery or the emergency response period at the end of 2021 and moving into early 2022, I mentioned before we worked with the regulators to develop a flushing recovering plan. And what that involved was going zone by zone, effectively a neighborhood by neighborhood, to flush water through that area of the system. We use a granular activated carbon treatment media on site. It's mobile. We moved it around as we went through. And then we took samples to demonstrate that the water on site in that zone after the flushing, we call it confirmation sampling. That data is also available on Safe Waters. To verify that the system has recovered, that the water has resumed normal water quality standards, and then only at that point did the Department of Health come in and certify that the system met standards. Department of Health lifted its health advisory, or amended it rather, and effectively certifying that the water was safe at that point, safe to consume. It's safe because it meets all the drinking water standards, in addition to the above and beyond requirements the Navy had to perform to demonstrate that the water was safe and had recovered.
Hi, I'm Robert Huber. I have actually have a question for you, one question, but I want to state something that these pathogens in their composition can vary depending on factors such as water source, pipe material, water stagnation time, and disinfectant levels. And through this fire hydrant biofilm flushing, there is one pathogen, a Mycobacterium avium complex, known as MAC. These species are common in pipe biofilms and are relatively resistant to chlorine disinfection. So I want the EPA to hear that, and I want the Department of Health to hear that. That's why I believe that the flushing in when you're doing these in the hydrant should be done not on a random basis based on the neighborhood and somebody calling you, but each and every, there should be a sample for every one of those hydrants, just because of this. Because if from the treatment plant, if you're doing chlorine, this bacterium, this pathogen, is resistant to it. And may I add, what it does, it kills people. And it gives them diseases like you can't believe, like you won't believe. So, this stuff is from the National Institute of Health, a very reliable source. You can find it online. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to go to Chris online, and then Michelle. I'm seeing, okay, maybe Michelle.
Hello.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, mine is going to be directed really in the original question sent to you, 10 to 12. So I really am concerned with a list of where the flushed water will be directed, such as onto lawns, yards, asphalt, Hālawa stream, the ocean, etc. And will any of the flushed water be directed to wastewater facilities? And pardon me, it's on the other page. I'm just going to go with my third part of my question because of the online delay. I can repeat if needed. But on number 12, if you are going to a wastewater facility with any of your water from flushing, is it capable of treating or filtering out jet fuel? And are you going to be utilizing GACs? And where are the GACs located? Jet fuel and its components.
Yeah, so the water that is discharged during the flushing operations is discharged immediately locally at the site. So most of the fire hydrants were...
I just heard operation. You could restart your answer.
Okay. So the flushing that we do when we discharge water from the fire hydrants, that's discharged immediately around the fire hydrant. So typically that's where the edge of the road, most utilities align with the road, so it's discharged onto a road. There is ponding or there is runoff into the local stormwater conveyance system. Those systems now feed into the wastewater treatment plant. So this flush volume of water does not process through the wastewater treatment plant. We do use GAC treatment, but that's for the 2 wells that are offline. So we're installing treatment systems to address the presence of contamination at those source wells. But we don't have a treatment system at our active well. And we don't use GACs at the wastewater treatment plant.
Chris, is there, beneath your question, a concern about the quality of the water that is being released from the fire hydrants?
Yeah, my concern is multiple, but really the safety of those getting all of that flushed water from it being in that local area, children, animals, and it being available on those lawns in mass quantities, and where's it going? Straight to ocean then? It sounds like there is no concern on their side, that it sounds like they believe that it to be 100% clean water just flushing onto wherever, so it can go to wherever. But with our history of it being a spill area and dislodging and porous and actually no remediation yet done to date of new pipes, so we know we all have contaminated pipe systems, that there is still concern. And there is now, I'm hearing, no testing done anymore about if there's TPH in that. You're only testing chlorine. So the main thing behind it, to try to speed that up, is similar to there being even any flooding or flash or an abundance of water in any area, there's usually even a brown water warning, and I don't believe there's enough warning to residents in any of this capacity, even just with that regular normal excess events of water, you know, in excess. And flushing does that to these neighborhoods. And obviously we're concerned about that not being clean water. And enough warning to anybody to stay away and have sufficient, what should they look for warnings? What should they be aware of? You know, like you would with a brown water.
Thank you. I believe Michelle is next. Online.
Yeah.
Aloha. So on page 17 of the flushing plan, it states both the Navy and Army public water system, previous to the emergency, didn't have an established routine flushing plan. So when the Navy and Army public water system last flushed, when did the Navy public water system last flush, not including when was occurred, the flushing that happened after the November 2021 spill that was remediated into early 2022. I'm going to just ask one question at a time, just to.
Okay. Yeah. I spoke to it a little bit earlier, but the maintenance flushing is typically a preventative measure, and so pretty much every month that the water system has been around, so over the past decade and longer, the Public Works Department has been conducting flushing around the system. Specifically, when was the last time the entire system was flushed? Probably within a year. I can't speak to that. I don't know if we have a record of when that was recently done in years leading up to 2021. But flushing, in this manner of flushing, was a routine activity around the system. And so it was going on most months of each year leading up to 2021, and has conducted or continued in that fashion since.
Okay, thank you. Would you please list all forms of communication that the Navy, EPA, and Department of Health have been using to inform the communities, businesses, and schools about these flushing plans? And exactly which agency is putting in those orders? And why is it being done, and will it be done in the future? Basically, how are you communicating this to all Navy water users? I know, for example, I got an email from Capelina Beach Homes notifying us of the flushing going on in our community, and I would have preferred to have seen the bottom part of the email up at the top, you know, like, look out for this first, and then the other stuff, just as a user of the water. But
Okay, thanks for that feedback.
I would also prefer to see maybe, like, we have notifications of coconut tree trimming on sandwich boards. Perhaps you should talk to Capelina about doing that on the sandwich boards, notifying people of flushing.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Appreciate that feedback as far as how the notice is drafted. How have we communicated? So similarly to how you received notification, there is a letter issued by the Joint Base that was provided to housing communities served by the system, and that went out to residents by email and by text notification alerts, kind of like an ad hoc message, if you know what that is. It's kind of a system-wide. Anybody registered to that system would get a prompt or notice. The joint base has provided notices about utility maintenance, for instance, through that means as well. So that was how that update was provided, or that notice was issued to residents. We will continue to provide notices in that fashion and make sure that the housing entities that are along or are served by the system, continue to relay that information in a timely manner.
Great, mahalo for that. One more suggestion with the notifications on the push for text messages. It would be cool if the residential communities would to give out regular emails to the community members, updating them on how to access this app and sign up for these notifications. That would probably be a helpful tool for the community members to be able to access that information as we have rotating people coming in and out of the community. Often that periodically would be nice to just have Capilina Beach Homes and other residential communities send out notification, hey, you wanna get this information sent to your phone, here's how you sign up. My last question here is please provide any and all current contracts between the Navy and landlord management company, like at Capilina Beach Homes, defining the Navy's responsibility for notifying or communicating with Capilina Beach Homes residents regarding any water-related issues involving Navy-owned water lines. Thank you.
So the housing neighborhoods on the installation are private entities that the military has a partnership with, so there are multiple. The Air Force has one, the Navy has one for the Navy housing. The Army has one for its housing over at Hālawa and Red Hill. So I'm not familiar with the framework of how those partnerships are structured, but I hear you on the notifications and relaying content and messages to consumers. So we'll take that back for discussion with the housing partners. So thank you.
I have a follow-up to that for Michelle.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Michelle. The delay's awkward. Yeah, she was specifically asking about Capilina Beach Homes, and again, we did give you these questions ahead of time, hopefully, so you could answer them tonight. But the question is, what is the Navy's legal responsibility for notifying or communicating with Capilina Beach Homes residents? I mean, you own the land, right? And you kind of lease it to the management company or the landlord. So who has really the legal responsibility to communicate to the people that live there, and also to the businesses, the restaurants? They're also on the Navy water lines, but are not part of, a military installation. And the schools.
The schools, yeah. So we have contact with the schools. We have been in contact with them for their maintenance monitoring programs through the long-term monitoring, the EDWM, and so forth. But for Capilina Beach Homes, they operate and maintain the homes. The Navy is responsible for the water utility.
Right.
So
right.
the relationship between the resident and the landlord for Capilina, the Navy doesn't oversee that. But I understand the concern and what's been communicated, so we'll commit to taking that back to Capilina Beach Homes management to make sure that they're reiterate the importance of providing timely information.
Right. It just.
They're a private
seems
entity.
I know, but it seems like you are the water purveyor, so it seems like you would have the legal responsibility to communicate with the residents and not sort of hand that off to a private entity.
And I would just like to say, from a regulatory standpoint, if there was a requirement for public notice, they would be required to communicate to anybody on the system, whether or not they, whoever they're serving water to, they need to do it. And this is something, I think, You know, early on during the sampling, there was some discussion. I think you all raised some concerns about certain neighborhoods were not being sampled. And during the extended drinking water monitoring plan, we had discussions about getting that area specifically part of the sampling for the additional year. I can't remember the name. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm going back to the flushing, like when people, I guess you should, okay. Maybe it will, for some of these questions, if we haven't gotten an answer, we'll put them in writing, and per the ACO, the Navy will respond within a month, I understand? That's per the ACO, correct? Or the orders, the rules of engagement that you amended, correct?
They take the questions and they form frequently asked questions that are posted on their website. We review them, and that happens on a monthly basis.
So all of our questions that were not answered here tonight will be answered on the frequently asked questions?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I understand that Chris Anton's hand is up. However, I'm taking my cues from Chair Gorman Chang.
Yes.
Okay, Chris, please, it is your time to ask.
Okay, thank you. I am trying to help clarify. This is not exactly a concern about testing. That is always a concern. But the question is, how are you as a utility? You're a utility company for public entities on the island. It is kind of not as well known, but you're not just base closed system for only military installations. So how are all users getting notifications of flushing? And why is it not from the utility company, which is the Navy? Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam is a utility provider to public places and people that have nothing to do with the military, but they are receiving the water from the military, and they are a customer, and they pay the water bill. So why would that be reneged to a landlord company? And then what about people that don't live there but drop their kids off at a childcare center or something, or shop in the store, or get water at a Burger King in, in the next mall, in the airport? I'm unsure how all of these notices go through business, and that is the concern and question of why is it not just directly to the users from the utility?
Again, we're getting in contact with the residents, and so the best, most efficient way is to work that through the landlord or the housing partners. But understand and appreciate the feedback on any community centers. We want to make sure we're accounting for everybody. So we'll take that back as feedback into the process. So thanks, Chris.
I'm a little curious about this question.
Yeah, I didn't say just housing, and you kept saying residents. I'm not talking about just people with leases. I'm asking about businesses as well, and it's not getting answered at all in any way, not once.
And building on that, where will the plan for notifications that covers all the different potentially drinkers of that water be? Where can this question get answered finally?
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at some of these entities and a list of who are all these properties, who are these entities that are served on. So we'll take a look at it, take that for action.
Yeah, when we do water drops at Eva Beach, a lot of families have questions about whether or not they are on the Navy water line or not. And my answer to them is, if you get a board of water supply bill, then you are not on the Navy water line. But if you don't get a water supply bill, right, a lot of times it's included in their rent or they're charged for it by their landlord, then you are on the water Navy line. And it's surprising to me, every time we go out, we went out 4 times this year, how many people do not know whether or not they are on the Navy water line. And I think that needs to be rectified, because if the Navy have, after, 2021, after 2014, and of course, you had admitted yourself, right? You're trying to rebuild trust, this whole lack of trust, the Navy and how they're being caretakers for our water. I think the public has a right to know that. And I know families who after I've questioned them, after I found out they are not getting a Board of Water supply bill, I found out that they also do have water issues. So, and that is really problematic for our residents here on this island, because if they're having issues with their water, then they need to know, they need to go to you folks to rectify that. That it's really your kuleana, it's really your responsibility. And that's part of, again, if you're really serious about building trust, you really need to move towards that direction. You really need to inform, be transparent.
Thank you, everyone. We do respond to concerns out there, so I appreciate you communicating that.
And where will the outreach efforts to diversify, to reach every corner of a potential impacted person, where can that be found?
I'll jump in more wearing my old hat as the Public Works Director for Joint Base. I would like, as I think about your question, we do an annual water quality consumer confidence report, just like the Board of Water Supply and other municipalities. And that does go to all entities that consume the water. So it goes, but we do go through the management company. So if there's a private, public-private venture with a management company for housing, it goes to them with the explicit direction to distribute this to all the residents. For the businesses that are on the water system, it also goes to we have a list of all the businesses or other entities that are on the Navy water system if they're being billed for Navy water, and that goes to them as well. So if there's an individual you're talking to that is unsure about where their water is coming from, they really need to direct that to their management company. And I think also internally we can take a look to see and also ask those questions to make sure they're fulfilling the responsibility. Because I think that's one easy way to answer the question is that if they're receiving that notification of an annual consumer confidence report, which would say their annual water quality report, because I think it's distributed at minimum, in addition to all the other mechanisms on the Safe Water website to see where you're located, where the water system is.
Well, and the concern here is because we have a housing crisis, people don't want to make trouble with their landlord. And I think that's another issue. I know of one complex that is on your Navy water line where the residents do not want to say anything because they don't want to make trouble. So again, how can you directly communicate this to the residents that if they do have issues that they need to come directly to you folks, and not to get them evicted, but to address that water issue. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm taking a very informal list of things that I'm putting in what's called a bike rack, and this notification and outreach is one of those things that more conversation needs to happen, and input as well as mechanisms for explaining what it is that you're doing and planning to do to address the questions that are raised here. I've been informed that there aren't any additional, there is one CRI member with a hand up. Jamie, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to reiterate what is trying to be asked by Chrissy and Michelle, and it's Mauna Loa Terrace. I mean, I know during the 2021 spill, I got sick there. I could light the water on fire at the Navy Exchange. You're the purveyor. Also, K-Bay, there's issues out there. Restaurant 604, you're the purveyor. There should not be a yearly report that is sent out. If you're doing flushing, you need to be protecting the people that not only live in those areas, but also come and work at the Navy Exchange for the military. You are affecting many people across the board, and then you have the Pearl Harbor Visitor Center where tourists are coming to visit and to pay tribute. Like, we need to be, it's not just the residents, it's not just the military, or just a housing area. You're affecting many people that need to be notified when this flushing is happening. And there needs to be transparency, to be clear and direct about it.
I think what we want is a proactive plan, not a reactive or a one-off. We really want an overall proactive plan, maybe a public community outreach plan where you identify all of these places that are on the Navy water line, have town halls or what have you, rather than just reacting here and there. I mean, you are the purveyor, and it's almost like people don't know, and you're kind of hidden. Certainly people that go to those restaurants don't know. And again, with the flushing plan, it would be nice to have, I guess you're gonna do a schedule 2026, right? It would be nice to have that schedule all at once. So everybody knows, okay, in March, this is gonna be my neighborhood. You know, rather than taking a piece here, a piece there, just an overall plan. I think that's what we're asking for, and I don't know what venue that will be in, but it's on the bike route.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we can public testimony, or do you have some updates that the CRI has listed on the agenda?